Stephen Moore. What do you think? Stephen Moore, what about the stick? What about the try for a hooker?
So, Steve, thank you for your time. Not only your last test week, but also your last week of professional rugby. What are your emotions right now?
Oh, look, I think you probably do reflect a little bit, I suppose. It's been a pretty long journey, so probably have taken a little bit of time the last couple of weeks to have a think about that. But, I really want to do my job this week and do my job within the way the team wants to play. And it's a big game for us after last weekend. So, for me personally, it's a big game, but it's huge for the team as well. And this team has done a lot of good things on this tour, and it'd be nice to finish well for the group.
How did you say it to the team? Obviously, you'd spoken to them earlier in the year about your retirement from Test rugby, but what about saying it to them about this is going to be the final one?
Yeah, it's hard. I think I didn't want to sound like John Farnham, I was just saying farewell all the time. But I had been thinking about it. I spoke to Brad Thorne about it a few weeks ago when we were in Tokyo at length about what his plans were and also the stuff I was sort of looking at doing after rugby probably came forward about 6 months, and that really factored into it as well. I had to make a decision there around did I want to play Super Rugby next year, or did I want to get stuck into what life after rugby looks like? And I'm excited by that. I'm excited by the new challenges and learning a lot over the next few years in whatever I'm going to do. And when it came down to it, I just probably felt like I couldn't give the Super Rugby another crack, and I was pretty keen to get into what was next. So, it's a tough one because I feel like the Reds are making some good inroads, and I think Brad will do an excellent job there. So obviously I'll miss out on that, but there's a lot of good young players there that'll sort of reap the benefits of what's happening there and the new players and the new culture that they're trying to develop. So I feel pretty comfortable in myself that I've made the right decision.
Can you give us any indication what's next? Obviously you've got it all mapped out, but any little insight?
I'm talking to some people in Brisbane about a role in the corporate space, and I've been lucky actually in my career to have some great mentors, and I think that's something that's very important. I'd like to continue to work on that after my career with the players currently still playing, and mentors can be so valuable, in giving you advice around what to do post-rugby, and I've been given some great advice around that and some great guidance. And look, I think when you retire, particularly these days, you never really know what you're going to end up doing. The days of people being having a trade or being a qualified this or that, they're probably not there anymore, because young players are really playing professional rugby from quite a young age, and it's all about getting an opportunity after you retire, and then it's up to you to make the most of it. So, as I said, I've been really lucky around that, and some people have really shown some faith in me around that. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot in the next 12 months and transitioning into my new life. So I know it's going to be very different. I'm going to miss it. I'm going to miss the buzz that you get from playing international rugby and Super Rugby, but you can't play forever. I certainly wish I was 5 years younger, at the moment, but you can't play forever, and I'm really comfortable in what's ahead.
Is it weird to think, or do you let yourself think, like, this time next week it's all said and done, or do you not think that far ahead? Is it just the job this Saturday?
Oh, the challenge is to just stay focused right through to the end. There's a big game on Saturday, but you go through all those emotions. Some days you feel excited, other days you feel a bit scared about it. I've been doing the same thing for a long time, so as of Sunday, it'll be the first time for a long time that I haven't been a professional rugby player. So I guess that'll hit me a little bit afterwards. And rugby in general for me, I've been playing since I was 5, so the best part of 30 years I've been playing every weekend, really, when I could and when I was able. So to not be doing that anymore is going to be different, that's for sure. But like I said, I feel well prepared and comfortable in that decision, particularly in the professional game, to be leaving it now and handing the reins over to the next generation of players. I've been very lucky and very fortunate to have a great run in the jersey, and I've enjoyed every moment of it. But you got to know when the time's right to step aside, and for me, that's now.
just quickly on this game, anything in particular that you've got set up, family coming, friends? Have you made it a bigger occasion than it normally would be, or is it just as per normal?
I've got my family are over here from Australia, which is great, and I was pretty keen to get them over for the last couple of games, and they've been able to make it over, which has been great. And I've got some family coming over from Ireland on the weekend as well, so there'll be a few there, and I think I'm looking forward to just sharing it with my teammates and people who you've been inside the the white lines with, and I think that's really important. And obviously, a good result will make that even better. So that's what we want, and for a team to be able to go out there and have a good performance and get the result we want, and then the rest will be good fun. So that's pretty much it.
But without wanting, you're never going to blow your own horn, but the second most capped Australian of all time, the second most capped Super Rugby player of all time, not just Australian but ever. Do you remember, like, if we're going to go down memory lane a bit, do you remember the first Super Rugby game for Queensland or anything like that?
I do, absolutely. I was in a pub in Brisbane. I'd played for university that day, and we were having a few drinks afterwards, as you do. I think I was 20, so early days for me in my career. I was studying at uni and playing at university in Brisbane. So I got a call in the middle of the night. Ty McIsaac got a red card playing for Queensland against the Stormers at Newlands. So my phone rang about half an hour later, and it was Anthony Herbert, and he said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm actually at the Orient Hotel in the city in Brisbane." And he said, "Mate, just leave there now, go home, pack your stuff, you're going to be coming to South Africa tomorrow." So Ty had got a red card, and he was automatically suspended for a week. So I was the third hooker in the squad at the time, behind Sean Hardman and Ty McIsaac. And the next day I was on a plane to Cape Town, and that was my first experience of Super Rugby. The next week, I made my debut in Pretoria at Loftus against the Bulls, and that was it. I remember it was Todai Kefu's 100th Super Rugby game, and we played against the Bulls there, and very nervous. Andrew Slack was the coach, and he wasn't a guy who said a lot, so I never quite knew if I'd get too much game time, but I think I got about 15 or 20 minutes, and I just remember being so nervous and just hoping that the ball didn't go into touch, so I'd have to throw a line out. That's how nervous I was, being around these players that I really watched as a kid growing up. Some of the guys that were my heroes, people like Ben Toon and Daniel Herbert and Chris Latham, Todai Kefu, Mark Connors, Nick Stiles, those kind of people. It's pretty amazing to be out there in that company. So, that was a great experience. It seems like such a long time ago now, but I guess you remember those kind of things pretty fondly.
Then casting forward, obviously a couple of good seasons in Queensland, proud Queenslander, but then shifting to Canberra. Talk us through that decision and what was going through your head at that point, and what motivated you to go down, and how did it all flow?
Yeah, at the time, I think I'd been at the Reds for 4 or 5 seasons, and I just felt like I was keen for something different and probably get out of my comfort zone a little bit. I'd grown up in Brisbane, gone to school there, university, a lot of my mates were there, and I felt like I wanted to challenge myself and do something different. I'd always heard about the Brumbies and the rugby program down there, and I think it was pretty clear to see that they had something really good down there, and look at every moment of my time in Canberra was great. I really loved my time down there, both in Canberra and also playing rugby for the Brumbies. It's a very special club to be part of, and I'll always fondly remember my time at the Brumbies. So for me and my family, that was a great period in my life, and I really we had some great times there on the field and also off the field. So that was a really good time. So, and I think it was, on reflection, I think it was great for me to do that in my life. I'd always encourage people to operate on the edge of your comfort zone, and do something different that you think you might not be able to do well or succeed at. And for me, moving to Canberra, and didn't know anything about the place really, and it became a great place to live. So I'm really, really happy that I did that.
Wallabies debut, 2005. What was the lead up to that week? like? I think against Samoa. What was that like?
It was, yeah. It was the first test of 2015 against Samoa, and I was on the bench behind Jeremy Paul. And I'll never forget, Stephen Hoyles was also picked that week to make his test debut, and he did his knee at training during the week, did his ACL, so he missed the whole season. So that was a pretty heartbreaking week for Hoylesy, who's a good mate of mine. So, but yeah, the game, we were up by a lot. I think I got 20 minutes at the end. Eddie put me on. We were already up by 40 or 50 points, so wasn't sort of the most intense atmosphere at the time. But for me, once again, it was a big occasion. I was very nervous. I just wanted to do my job really well, and playing in the front row, you obviously have some pretty important jobs to do, so I was making sure I did that, and I got some great help during that week by people like Nathan Sharp and Jeremy Paul particularly really looked after me, probably off the field as well as on the field. So I remember after the test, Bill Young and Jeremy took me to Bill Young's pub at Concord, and we had a bit of dinner and a couple of beverages. So that was my sort of initiation in the team. I got presented my test cap obviously after the test, and that was a great experience. And I'll also say after that we went up to Darwin. Actually, Eddie sent about half a dozen of us up to Darwin to play for the Northern Territory Mosquitoes. So there was 6 or 7 professional players, and then the rest made up from local players up in the Northern Territory, and we played against Samoa, and we won the game, and it was just an amazing team to be part of. Just, we had tradies and crocodile farmers and just local club players playing with, guys who were playing Super Rugby and Test Rugby, and that sort of stuff was pretty cool, And I know some of the players have remained in contact with some of the guys that played, from up that way, some of the crocodile farmers and things like that. So I think that's what rugby's all about.
Going back, obviously there's been several milestones since 50th, 100th, and so on. But what sort of sits there? Do you have a ranking system that you've got the most memorable moments or anything like that, or is there any key ones that stick out along the way?
Look, I think in my career I've played in Super Rugby finals, World Cup finals, and not won either of them, and that's obviously disappointing. But the overriding feeling for me is about the people that you meet along the way and the mates that I've made, and the people that have influenced my life. And I think that's probably the thing that stays with you the most, the people you meet and the mates, and they're the things that you carry with you, into life after rugby. And I think that's what's really important. So those big games are great, and obviously you'd prefer to win them than not, but the journey builds your character and makes you into the person that you are, whether it's a good or bad. And I think I've tried to learn from every experience, whether it's been a good one or a bad one, and always stayed humble around all that stuff. So that's been a big influence on my life, the whole journey, the ups and the downs, and like I said, the people that you meet along the way are really the things that sort of hit home to you, and have a massive impact on you.
One of those people you met along the way was your wife, Courtney.
Yes.
Talk us through that story. Obviously, a proud South African. I'm sure the Springboks Wallabies games are a bit of fun in the Moore household.
Yeah, well, I think I've finally converted her now, but it was 2008. We played South Africa in Durban, and we had a win there. It was our first time to win in South Africa for a while, I think, and then we played them again the next week in Johannesburg at Ellis Park, and they put a big score on us the second game. And then afterwards, I just remember I was in my hotel room, just probably about to go to bed, and Sharpie said, let's just go out and have a bit of dinner, or stay awake, because we were flying home the next day. So out we went, and I saw Courts at the bar, just having a chat with her sister, and we just started having a chat, and that was it. Just a pretty standard meet at the bar type story. So we did the long distance thing for a long time, and that was tough, obviously. But she made the decision then to move to Australia, and we made a life together. So I'll always be grateful for that, and of all the things that's happened to me in my rugby career, that's probably the thing that's obviously been the greatest influence on my life, and the greatest thing to happen. So we've got 3 young children now, and she's been in Australia now for about seven or 8 years. So I think she's finally calls herself a Wallabies supporter after all those years. But you can never tell, can you?
And so what Sharpies to thank for it all?
Yeah, well, I think Al Baxter lent me a collared shirt, or if I remember. I don't think I even packed one for that trip, but those things are happening. The sliding doors type thing. You would know about.
Oh, I know all about it. The go into like moving forward now. Obviously, speaking about your career after footy, but speaking about family, how much do you think about weekends at home and spending that? Over the course of a year, you probably spend about 150 days on the road per year, or probably more. But what about the future now? Is that exciting for you?
Yeah, it is exciting, and I don't want to say that I'm going to love it because I've never done it for so long. I just haven't had that part of the week as it has always been about playing footy and preparing for a game and everything that goes with that. So, look, it's a bit of an unknown really, and I am looking forward to having a bit more time at home and not travelling so much because we obviously do a lot of that. But in saying that, rugby's is showing me the world. It's shown me so many great places, and I would never ever look negatively on that. It's been such a wonderful experience for me and wonderful part of my life, the travelling side. So I guess after you do it for so long and you start to have family and that, it becomes a little bit more difficult, that's for sure. But there's plenty of people out there in the same situation, that travel for work or whatever they're doing and give up a lot to do what they love. You only have to look at people in the military that go away for a long time and risk their lives, and it makes everything that we do pretty insignificant. So whilst I'll close the door on that part, I'll always be grateful and look at that period of my life really fondly. So, and as I said, it's going to be a bit of an unknown. I think I'll probably be getting under everyone's feet a little bit, so I have to find some things to do.
What about footy next year? Would you consider going back to the Red Heavies up in Queensland, or will you get your nose in and around the joint, or is it just hanging up, never to go back?
Yeah, I've already had a bit of banter between a few of my old mates that we played Colts with many years ago. So you never know. I might pull the boots on for fourth grade, or I think froth grade they call it up there. So,
mate, you wouldn't want to come against you. Imagine lining up against a 129 test veteran.
I definitely won't be playing in the front row though.
Where would you feature?
Back row.
Yeah. Do you reckon your career could have gone for longer if you were sitting out where Hoops and Shawnee and that are now?
No way. I think those guys put their bodies and heads in places that you would never. But I think you need a bit of luck around injuries in your body and holding up. And I see a lot of fantastic players whose careers are cut short by injury and constantly plagued by injury. I've played with a lot of players like that. So I've been lucky and in the sense I haven't had too many bad injuries, and that's probably helped a little bit that I've been able to go so long.
Your one big one obviously was in 2014, just named Wallabies skipper against France in that series. How was that for you emotionally, for your family, and how do you think you dealt with that leading into what was a very successful 2015?
Yeah, at the time it was pretty heartbreaking. I think it was 10 seconds into the game really that it happened. So I think what helped me a lot was I had the surgery 2 days later, and I was already in my head then on the road to recovery. So I think I was pretty lucky. Some players have to wait a couple of months before they can get it fixed, and for the swelling and all that. I'm not sure about the technical side, but that helped me a lot mentally, I think. And also, when I took a step back, it was my first major injury. So when I took a step back, I tried to spend time doing other things that I hadn't been able to do, and I tried to stay positive. So and once again, I think that there's people out there in far worse situations. So it gives you a lot of perspective, those kind of things. When you think you've had it tough or you're struggling, you look around pretty quickly, see that there's plenty of people out there in much worse situations. So I just simply injured my knee playing sport at the end of the day. So it wasn't about me. I was just keen to get back on the field and play footy again. And then obviously Czech gave me the responsibility the next year to captain the side in the World Cup. And that was something that I'll always remember fondly.
On that campaign, do you look back on it? Obviously, you say you remember it fondly. Is there some key moments in that team and that building of that team that you'd look on to use in a corporate life, say, that how that comradeship, for want of a better term, was built in the course of that team?
Yeah, no doubt there was many lessons there, and I think the one thing I learned through that period was I would have probably thought for a lot of my career that every player had to be the same and prepare the same and sort of do the same things, and I learned a lot from Czech through that time around that every team needs different characters and different ways of doing things, and that was really eye-opening for me and something I really enjoyed being part of. So once again through that campaign, it's the people you remember, the friendships, the time you spent together. We spent 2 great weeks in the US beforehand at Notre Dame, and I think that was great for the group going to the World Cup. We really bonded and had a good time together, trained really hard, and that's something that you look back and the amount of times I've spoken to people about that experience. Obviously it was special. So whilst we came up short in the final at the end, and New Zealand thoroughly deserved to win. They were the better team on the day, so there's no shame in going out there and trying your best, and we did that on the day, and I was very proud of the team, and I think that we made our country proud in that instance, So when you see things like the Opera House and the Wallaby colours on the side and those kind of things really make you quite emotional, because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing this for, is because we're putting on our national colours and we're representing our country, and when you do that, you have the opportunity to change people's lives for the better, make people happy, and I think that we really tried to do that through that campaign, and I will say that I feel like this team is starting to get the hang of that type of thing as well.
Last couple before I let you go, but the mentor part that you mentioned at the start, how important do you think that is for former players or current players to be involved in mentoring these younger players that are coming through, not just about footy but maybe life in general as well?
Yeah, I would be certainly of the view that as a former Wallaby, soon to be former Wallaby, it's incumbent on you to try and give back in some way to the people coming after you. I really feel strongly about that, and it's not compulsory, but I think it's something that's good to do, whether it's advice around any number of things in their life or what they want to do after. And I really think rugby has a good opportunity to grow that whole mentor concept and help the young players get a real idea of what they want to do beyond the bright lights, and when everything is gone, you want to have something that interests you and something that makes you excited, and I think that we probably haven't done that as well as we could have. And personally, I think young kids now, particularly around school and school leaving age, are maybe spending a little bit too much time training and spending time around gyms and rugby environments. I think we can really try and expand the horizons a little bit and get some of these young athletes exposed to some other walks of life. And for me, I grew up playing club rugby, and I played 4 or 5 seasons of first grade before I played for Queensland. And when I was playing club rugby, I just got to mix with such a diverse group of people. There was people like us who were training quite regularly with the Reds. There was tradies. There was people working in town coming in a certain time, just getting changed on the side of the field before training. And you really got a great perspective on what life was like and how good it was to be a professional rugby player at the time. So perhaps we maybe don't get exposed to that enough at the moment, and I'd like to really try and work hard beyond my career to help make a difference in that space. And the thing about mentors as well is a lot of people think they have to be older than you or like sort of someone really senior. I think you can also have mentors that are younger than you. I think that's something that's very relevant in this day and age, and I think we can be really creative and open-minded about what that looks like. But as I said, I'm quite passionate about trying to make a difference in that space.
You've been actively involved in other sports as well, always wanting to meet big thinkers from those sports. Rugby in the Australian sporting landscape, how do you see it growing in the next couple of years, and what can it do to escalate its growth, I guess, especially considering it has such an international interest at the moment?
Yeah, look, I think that's been a much debated topic, and I think for me, the grassroots of the game is the bedrock of the game, and we probably don't spend enough time in that part of the game as professional players. You know, I'd love to see our top players playing a little bit more club rugby and engaging, so that when a young player comes in at 5 or 6 years old to start playing for a club, they can see a Michael Hooper or an Israel Folau pulling on their club jersey, and that gives them that pathway to go and play for their country. Now, the calendar doesn't always allow for that, but that's a bit of an idealistic view of it for me. And then probably the second part is just making sure that the professional game is robust and the product is something that people want to see. And Super Rugby has definitely become something that people aren't very interested in. And I'm just being completely honest there. I just think that it's confusing. It's something that the fans find a little bit hard to follow, and I think that product needs to be really revitalised and regenerated, and just really listen to what people want, I suppose, and what people are going to consume, because that drives the commercial side of the game, which in turn can help the grassroots. So everything is intertwined. That if the Wallabies do well, there's lots more money in the game that you can put into grassroots, and likewise, if our Super Rugby teams do well, then that'll help the Wallabies. But one thing I will say is I'm a very, very strong advocate of club rugby, and I think there's a really good place for club rugby in the cultural and also the high performance landscape of Australian rugby going forward.
This Wallabies group, you leave it at the end of 2017, probably 18 months out, just about from another World Cup campaign. You've seen a lot in your time, Wallaby squads and groups, and yes, they change every year and maybe every tournament, every rugby championship or what have you. But how do you see this one faring for that 19 edition?
There's no doubt this group now is in the list of teams that can win the World Cup, and I think they know that. I think other teams will know that. So it's up to that team now in the next 18 months to do the necessary work to go and do that. And I think from here to the World Cup, the only teams we're going to be playing are sort of top 5 teams, So when those teams are all playing each other, that really gives a good indication of where you're at. And it's so competitive in that right at the top there. Obviously New Zealand have been quite dominant at the top, but I think even you see this year that some of the games have been very close around those games. So it's up to the leadership of the group now, which has really grown in the last 6 months, to then take the next step. And I do think we're starting to talk internally about the right things that are going to make us into the world-class team. We probably spent a lot of time in the past getting to that point, but now I think we're sort of understand how we want to play, and we're trying to really work on the small things that are going to get us there now, which is a real positive. So, I'm excited to see what this team can do.
And just finally, some quick ones for you. The best teammate you've ever played with, have you got a couple in mind, or maybe one?
I'll probably have to say Nathan Sharp, because when I started playing with Sharpie at the Reds, he was someone who I looked up to. He was someone I watched on TV when I was at uni. I remember us going around to his house when we were Colts and he was playing for Australia, and I think we stole all his Bundaberg rum cans out of his shower that they used to give all the Wallabies players, and we went on to obviously become great mates and play a lot of rugby together. So.
And he set you up with Courtney.
Well, there's that as well, and we're still great mates to this day. So that's the kind of thing that rugby can give you. That really great friendships, and friendships that last a lifetime. We had some great times on the field, and I'm looking forward to seeing a bit more of him now. But yeah, he was certainly someone who gave me a lot of time when I was starting. And probably put Jeremy Paul in that category as well. So you never forget that. Those early days.
And what about the best opponent, the opposite number you came up against? Would it be a hooker, or would it be someone else you've seen?
I'd probably have to say Richie McCaw would be the player who played consistently at his best, over a long period of time, and you got to respect that, and I do respect him as a player. Just a very great competitor, was a good leader for New Zealand, and he'll go down as one of the greats, and I'd probably put someone like George Smith in similar type of category, maybe for different reasons. I think George has just showed amazing longevity to be able to play in so many different competitions and all over the world and be so dominant in every team that he's played in, and I think that says a lot about him. So I count myself lucky to have played with people like that.
And I know you're going to say no, but does it sound weird when someone says to you or says about you that, yeah, you were the best competitor they came up against, that you were the best teammate, that Stephen Moore is a legend of world rugby? How does that sit with you?
Oh, look, I think I've always been very privileged to count myself as a Wallaby. I know there's only 900 odd people that have got that opportunity, so I took it very seriously. It was something that really meant a huge amount to me, and I tried to, I guess, share that emotion with my teammates, and I'm going to miss it. When it's all done, I'm going to really miss it. It's been a big part of my life, and when it's done, it's done. So you want to make sure you did all you could.
Right, thank you, and all the best, mate.
Thanks. Cheers.